Okay, so this is probably getting close to the end of the cases here. I'm going to do this case on this. Everybody should be tired of exigent circumstances, but I have a feeling you're going to have a little bit better. And I mean, to be honest, even if you watch all these videos in this playlist, you still don't get the experience of actually going out there, making these decisions on the fly, justifying them in a report, defending that report on the stand when you have a defense attorney attacking you and the judge attacking the DA and the DA trying to sway you to say what they want to happen. It's just really hard to get people to understand. It kind of bugs me sometimes when they go, oh man, cops are just flatfoots. They don't need any knowledge. Well, if you're just out there writing tickets and responding to stuff and never doing any investigations, then you can probably be an idiot. And there's a lot of quota hires that get hired and get promoted and become supervisors. But anyway, I digress. Let's get to this case. And then the next case I'm going to do is on Terry stops and anonymous tips, because that's what I think the big issue is. The courts need to get a hold of this anonymous tip thing and stop giving government the authority to act on anonymous, non-reliable tips. I think that the term they use is indicia of reliability. Indicia is, when we do search warrants, we're looking for indicia of ownership, meaning I'm looking for papers of water bill, electric bill, car payments, anything that's addressed to you that you get there, that most people who live in a house, that gives me indicia that you're the property owner, you have care, custody, control, you live there, you're getting mail there. So those are things that we look for, indicia of ownership, when we search a house. The courts have used the term indicia of reliability. What are the things that make this anonymous tip reliable? And I'll get into that in the next one. So let's go to this one. U.S. versus Contreras. Did exigent circumstances, and this is a short one, exigent justify a warrantless entry into a residential garage to recover doors? Now, residential garages are one of those iffy areas. If it's attached to the house, it has a different standard than if it's unattached. How close is it? Were they standing there? Is there a pathway? Is there a covered pathway to the house? All these things can come into play on whether or not this is part of the home. Does it have a door? Was the door shut? Did the person run into it? So what was in plain view of the officer? Is there a reasonable expectation of privacy if the garage door is open and I can see it from the street? So there's a lot of factors that come into garages, but we're getting into the extra circumstantial in this case. Let's get into the facts here. DEA agents and Chicago police followed a suspected drug trafficker named Soto as he drove from his home to a nearby dumpster into which he discarded several items. Okay, so is this in and of itself enough to stop a guy? No. I absolutely would have searched the dumpster for what he threw away. Remember, once you throw things in a public dumpster, once you put your trash on the street for the government or sanitation to pick it up, you therefore give up your right to privacy to your trash. So when this guy, this drug dealer, dumped his stuff into a dumpster, he gave up his right to privacy. I can climb in that dumpster as a government agent, a police, and search that dumpster and seize any evidence I want in that dumpster. Now, I'm going to have to connect it to his house and to him by prints or DNA, or if there's mail in there that's addressed to him that's next to the empty packages with residue of cocaine that looks like it was packaging, whatever. So I'm going to have to connect all that. But if I watch him throw a black bag of trash into a dumpster, and then after he leaves, I go to the dumpster, and there's only one black bag, and I snap a picture of the dumpster to show it's the only black bag, and I just watched him throw a black bag, it's reasonable that the black bag that I recover from the dumpster belongs to him. But when I open a black bag, I'm going to be looking for things that connect him more. But anyway, again, all these things go into different areas. What we're looking at, was this reasonable for what they did next? Okay, so he drove from his home, threw a bag into the dumpster, discarded several items. When he left, officers inspected the dumpster. Oh, I didn't even know this. Okay, they inspected the dumpster and found items, trafficking related items, such as aluminum foil molded into bricks, cool. About the size of a kilo of cocaine, cool. They're going to have to say, how do you know it's kilo cocaine? Well, in my experience working with drugs, kilo cocaine is usually wrapped in foil paper, come in the size of so many inches by so many inches, blah, 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 blah. So they would have to justify on why they believed it was a kilo of cocaine. As Soto drove away from the dumpster, other officers followed him as he went to the home of Luis Contreras. Okay, or Luis, I'm sorry. Luis, where he drove directly into Luis' two-car garage and closed the door. Okay, so the door was closed. He drove into the garage. He just left a dumpster where he discarded evidence. So now we know he had possession of illegal items, and he just destroyed and tried to get rid of that evidence of a crime, and we watched him do it. Is that enough to go in the house? Maybe. We'll see. The officer staked out the home, and one of them took up a position facing the garage door. Okay? After a short while, the door opened completely, and the officer had a very clear, not just a clear view, a very clear view of Soto and Contreras exchanging something that, according to the officer, indicated the passing of money and drugs. We call this a hand-to-hand buy, hand-to-hand exchange. Person hands you something, you hand him cash, and you go on your way. That's considered a normal hand-to-hand exchange or buy, consistent with drug trading or drug selling. Anyway, according to the officer, indicated the passing of money and drugs. Soto then walked to his van, which was also parked inside the garage, and he removed an orange shoebox with tape around the outside. He's got him some nice shoes with tape around it. The box was not, however, entirely secure with tape. As Soto was walking with the box toward Contreras, the box buckled and fell to the ground. At that point, a rectangular white object wrapped in plastic fell out. Sounds like a brick of possible drugs. The officer testified that he recognized the object as a kilo of narcotics. Officers then rushed into the garage to prevent destruction of evidence under exigency and arrested both men and seized the contents of the shoebox, which had 5 kilograms of cocaine. Nice pop. Officers then Mirandized Contreras, who waived his rights. He's an idiot. Should have never waived his rights. Should have requested a lawyer and refused to talk. But he didn't. He's a dumb criminal, and he waived his rights and admitted that there were 2.5 kilos of cocaine in one of the closets. Oh my God, man. See, we don't ever catch the smart criminals. So when we look good in court and you see cops testifying and you see DAs standing up there saying, yeah, we got this great case, we did this, we got it because of idiots. Okay? We don't catch the real guys. Anyway, the officer seized all the cocaine, and Contreras was indicted for, among other things, conspiracy to possess, distribute 500 or more grams. When his motion to suppress the evidence, which is almost always coming in drugs or guns, he pled guilty to conspiracy. When his motion to suppress the evidence was denied, he pled guilty to the conspiracy charge. Discussion. Contreras argued that the evidence should have been suppressed because, one, the officer violated his right to privacy when he looked into his garage. Wrong. As long as an officer is where he's at, he can look and view and see anything. So if the officer was across the street and he had binoculars and he's looking through his car into his garage, totally legal. Tough titties. The subsequent warrantless entry into the garage was unlawful because there was no exigency. I would disagree. You see two guys, it's reasonable to believe that if they recognize you or you see them or you let them go or they close the garage, you've already seen them dispose of evidence, you have more than enough probable cause to believe they're engaged in criminal drug activities or marketing or selling or possessing. Therefore, I disagree. But anyway, his confession was involuntary because he was traumatized by the sudden arrival of the officers. So they're trying to get his confession out because confessions are the best thing for a jury. You talk to the cops and you give them a confession, or you talk to the cops and lie, you might as well give them a confession because the jury's going to convict your ass. Which is why, I say again, never talk to the police. His confession was involuntary because he was traumatized by the thing. The first and third arguments were frivolous as Contreras' right to privacy. The court ruled he did not have one because he and Soto conducted their drug transaction in an attached garage with the door wide open, in essence with one whole wall of the house removed by their choice and displaying their drug transaction in plain view. I agree. As for Contreras' confession, the court similarly disposed of his claim that he was traumatized by pointing out, among other things, that by the time he confessed, the heat of the situation had de-escalated and Contreras was handcuffed and had been removed. So it sounds like Contreras gave this confession after they moved him out, put him in a car, set him somewhere else. There was time for him to calm down. If he would have made this thing as a spontaneous statement in the heat of the battle when the cops were running at him at gunpoint, it sounds like the court would have suppressed it. I would disagree, but anyway. Contreras handcuffed and removed. The more important issue was whether the warrantless entry into the garage was lawful under exigent circumstance, exception to the warrant requirement. Per this exception, the warrantless entry to search private property is permitted if the need for police action is urgency and outweighs the intrusiveness. Again, we keep hearing this term, outweighs its intrusiveness. Okay, as the Supreme Court explained, balance the privacy-related and law enforcement-related concerns determining the intrusion was reasonable. Here, there were two legitimate law enforcement interests that were served by a warrantless entry. Taking into custody two men who had just engaged in what looked like a hand-to-hand multi-kilo cocaine transaction, and two, preventing the men from destroying the kilogram that had just fallen to the floor, because these were both weighty law enforcement interests, and because Contreras' right to privacy became non-existent when the garage door opened. The court ruled the exigency did, in fact, exist. Accordingly, it affirmed Contreras' conviction. This, to me, was a pretty clear case of exigent circumstances. This is a prevention of evidence. You see a crime that's happening in front, in plain view, in your view, whether or not it happens. If they would have done this same thing in front of the open door of the house, I think they could have entered the house, even though it was his home, and even though they didn't have a warrant. When you see, or when criminals, or you conduct activity to where you lose your right to privacy and you don't have barriers, doors shut, blinds closed, gates at your front door, when you don't do those things to make sure there's no confusion that you expect privacy, then you're going to lose when government does something like this. Okay? I think it's a pretty clear case. This is a good case of exigent circumstances. So I'm on a cop side on this one. Rick, you're a big boot, Jake. You always take the cops because you're... Shut up, you freaking crybabies. I'm trying to educate you. All right, we'll end that there.